Hello everybody and welcome to Markers and Monsters, where today I'm bringing you some sweet kaiju action. As always, I'm your humble host Colin, and today we're drawing Mothra and Godzilla. Yes, two great tastes that taste great together. Let's get right into it. As you can see, I'm just sketching out Godzilla here. This drawing, let me talk a little bit about composition here before we get right into the movies and stuff. What I've chosen to do is kind of a cross composition here, where Godzilla is facing one way, Mothra is facing the other. I don't want these two to look like they are fighting each other, but maybe they're fighting other creatures or tag teaming it up. That's a good way to do it, kind of do that sort of an X composition, if you will. Now, as you can see, too, their faces are very close together, with Mothra's head pretty much right above Godzilla's, and I think this adds a little bit of focus to that part of the drawing. Down below with Godzilla's hands, I just kind of wanted to give the impression that Godzilla is, a lot larger than the frame goes, and kind of in there you can imagine him stomping through downtown. And I did a very simple background as well, with just a couple of shapes put in for buildings. Alright, so let's get coloring then. Now, Mothra is a very colorful creature, so we're going to use a lot of bright colors for her. Godzilla is pretty dark, so I'd like to use relatively bright greens and then let a lot of the inks that I'll put in for the textures kind of define his color or darken up those brights. So if you've been watching the channel for a while, you know me, I do love my Godzilla movies, and one of the great things about the entire Godzilla franchise is all the different side characters and side monsters that come into play. Mothra is a terrific example of one of those other creatures. If you ask any buddy on the street, if you're a cool cat and you just walk up to random people on the street and ask them about Godzilla movies, which you should be doing all the time, and say, name one other Godzilla creature other than Godzilla, chances are they're probably going to say Mothra. Mothra is one of the more well-known kaiju creatures in the Godzilla canon. Interestingly enough, Mothra started out in her own movie, aptly titled Mothra, from 1961. Now, this was a Toho release, Toho being the company that puts out the Godzilla movies. And it wasn't long after that Mothra was popular enough and Godzilla was popular enough, and they decided, hey, let's smash them up together. 1961, Mothra came out, her solo movie. 1964, only a few years later, Mothra vs. Godzilla came out. This is a great early Godzilla movie. Godzilla is still the bad guy in this movie, more or less. But it definitely is a really cool, if you're interested in the 60s Godzillas, then this isn't a bad one to watch. And another thing is, this is a great movie. You can watch it with your kids or, younger viewers or whatever. There's nothing in it that's going to be very upsetting to them, so that's good. Soon after that, in the same year, Mothra was in Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, or Ghidorah, my mistake. And then Ibera, Horror of the Deep, Destroy All Monsters. And then into Godzilla vs. Mothra in the 90s, Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. So Mothra has been around. She's been in 9 official Godzilla movies, as well as having her own movie. And in the 90s, a trilogy called Rebirth of Mothra. And, spoiler alert here, if you've seen Skull Island, you waited till the end. Well, it looks like Mothra might be in the upcoming Godzilla movies in the Monsterverse that they're setting up. So that's going to be pretty great. One thing I like about Mothra, too, is how she is always more or less the good guy in the movies that she's in. Mothra is very much a creature that is a defender of the earth, or the peoples, that she on the island, Infant Island, where she's from. So a lot of monsters, have that they're either a good guy or a bad guy, kind of like Godzilla. You never know what he's going to be in each movie, but anytime Mothra shows up, you can pretty much guarantee that she is going to be a good guy, and that's pretty cool. She's one of the very few kaiju monsters who are almost totally totally good aligned, I guess we'll say. So pretty neat stuff. Mothra is usually accompanied by two little, they call them the fairies, or shojibin, if I'm not mispronouncing that Japanese terribly, which I probably am. But they're these little like fairy girls, usually twins, or they're close enough that they might be twins. But they are her like priestesses or whatever. They're little, couple inches high, these girls, and they sing to Mothra and do all that kind of fun stuff. And they're kind of the face of Mothra, as it were. They can tell the other human characters what Mothra's thinking or what Mothra's doing and stuff like that. There is a great scene in Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, where the little shojibin talk to the human characters and they translate all of the different monster speech. The Mothra larva is talking to Rodan and Godzilla, and they are translating the voices of all three of those monsters, which is a lot of fun. So good times, good times. All right, I'm getting done with the coloring here. You can see I put some cool explosions in down near Godzilla's arm. And I hope you can see what I mean just about the outline of the buildings. Just very quick geometric shapes just to give you the impression that maybe there's some buildings back there. I went with kind of a light purple in the sky and some smoke, just a color to pop out all of the other colors within the monsters. So let's get inking. As you can see, I left Godzilla's mouth open and white at this point. That's because it's very, very hard with white teeth to kind of color around them without knowing exactly where they are. And you don't want to have a ton of pencil marks in there either. So what I'm going to do is I am going to ink in the teeth first, and then any place that I need to put in some of that like purple background, I can just throw that in after the inks have been dried. Now, one thing I'm doing here, I don't know if it's hard to see or not, but Mothra is very fuzzy, like a cute little moth. So the lines around her aren't very solid. They're very like jagged and I don't know, just to give that impression of a fur. They're kind of dotted and dashed here and there. And with a lot of this, I'm letting the color speak through, like on her, the patterning on her wings and stuff like that. I don't feel a lot of a need to really color that in. Now, Godzilla, on the other hand, his skin isn't furry, so I'm using a lot of, straight lines. You'll see when I start filling in the body that there's a lot of that rough texture there, and that's done just by doing not even jagged lines, but just quick little lines and dashes are here just to give the impression that there's lots of texture happening there. You can also use that to help add in shading areas. I find that if an area is supposed to be darker, add in more of those texture lines, and it's going to look like it's shaded pretty well. So good stuff. This is a good drawing to do. I was in a real kaiju mood when I did it. It actually sold at the most recent Monster Bash, so to whomever bought it, if you watch this video or whatever, thank you. I really appreciate it. But yeah, good stuff. I find that Godzilla is a very popular subject at a lot of the conventions I go. People love the big G and all the monsters and stuff, and I totally get it. I truly, truly do. I think this stuff is really cool and a lot of fun. Now, I remember watching Godzilla movies when I was a kid. It seemed like TNT had a ton of them, and not just on Monster Vision. They'd have like Godzilla nights or even just Godzilla during the day. I mean, sometimes, heck, you just, all of a sudden, there's Godzilla. So, good times. I remember always laughing at just the cheapo toy tanks that he'd be crushing and the special effects, which I find to be extremely charming. That's one of the things about the Godzilla movies. So let's sign it and take a look at the scan here real quick. Very, very cool. Fun to do. As you notice, I did not ink or outline the buildings or the smoke or the explosions. Let those be in the background. Let your eye be drawn to the parts that are inked in the foregrounds, and let those elements kind of pop out. All right, guys, this was a blast. I love talking about big monsters. Glad we could talk about Mothra and not just Godzilla this time. So very cool stuff. Please check out all my social media stuff online. You know the drill. Say hi to me or whatever, and that's it. All right, guys, we'll see you on the next episode of Markers and Monsters.
Mothra, Mothra, 동강가사쿠야 인도무 루스토윌라도 한바 무양 단다방우라단 돈주칸라 가사쿠야